Craig West is a strategic accountant who has over 25 years' experience advising business owners based on his background as a CPA in public practice. Following 6 years of study to gain 2 master's degrees, Craig focused on capital gains tax for business sales, advising on strategic management of tax issues. The experience formed a very strong view that business owners and often their advisors were unprepared and unaware of the steps required to prepare a business for exit. Craig now acts as a strategic mentor for mid-market business owners and has written 4 critically acclaimed books on employee incentives, succession planning, asset protection, and exit strategies. Craig has conducted numerous seminars and keynote presentations throughout Australia and internationally, including advisor education programs for the Institute of Chartered Accountants, IOOF, and CPA Australia. We are very lucky to have Craig sharing with us his insights, and especially at the moment, as he mentioned earlier, with a job market that is intensely tight, with people moving and leaving and shaking, and the businesses needs to retain and keep their clients, their customers, their employees in the room on an ongoing basis so that they can keep supporting and providing the best possible outcomes for their customers and clients, and of course their businesses. Without further ado, I hand to you, Craig.
Thanks very much, and hi everyone. I'm a pretty casual kind of guy, so I've got a presentation here, but I'm very happy to stop and pause and answer questions on the way through. If anything needs to be clarified or you want me to go over anything, I'm going to sort of cover off a bit of a broad view around succession and exit planning. And I'm also going to focus a little bit on employee share plans, because that's a topic that has really been quite popular ever since COVID came. I remember very funnily had a very call from a client in Queensland, a big engineering firm, who had a proposal from us for 2 years and didn't do anything about it. And literally the first 2 weeks of COVID rang me and said, how quickly can you get an ESOP done? And I said, why? And he said, because I've got 135 people working from home and I don't reckon any of them are working. So his view was an ESOP would solve that. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do with employee share plans and how they work. I'm actually going to skip over the introduction because that's already been done beautifully. A little bit about Succession Plus. I've got 26 advisors all around the country. I've also got offices in London and Auckland, so operating in New Zealand and the UK, working mainly with mid-market size businesses, so typically businesses that turn over between $5 and $100 million who are thinking about exiting. And that's an important point because there's not sort of doing much about it. Often this is something that people leave for too long, too late, and then rush to try and get a solution in place. So my advice to people is start early and make sure you've got the solution well before you need it. I guess the good place to start is, what is it about? And for me, succession planning or exit planning is really about getting 3 things right at the same time. So firstly, the business needs to be ready. And exit and succession, by the way, could be a sale, could be passing it on to your children, could be a management buyout, could be an IPO, listing on the stock exchange. It could be all sorts of things. So it's really just about making sure that you've got yourself, the business, and the financials of both the business and your personal financial situation ready for a transition or exit or sale or passing on to kids, etc. And there's a lot in that. If you start to think about some of the various issues that come up, often it's about getting the timing right. Often it's about making sure that everything is lined up at the same time. The business is in good shape. Your personal finances are ready so you can retire. And the last one's interesting because we're starting to see now a bit of a trend where a lot of people are really struggling with retirement. And because of the improvements in healthcare and life expectancy, people that retire at 65 or even 70 can expect to live 5, 10, 15, more like 20 years after they retire. And that's a very long time to do nothing. I've got great examples of clients I had one client who sold his business for $22 million. And I said to him, what do you want to do, Phil? And he said, I just want to play the top 5 golf courses in Australia. And I said, well, that's great. That's going to take you 3 weeks. Then what? You got another 20 years after that. So I think the issue is that people who typically run businesses, they're entrepreneurial, they're busy, they're doing lots of things, and then it all suddenly stops. I mean, think about those of you that know Ivan Kay. Imagine Ivan Kay doing nothing all day. It's terrifying. He's just going to go out and cause absolute havoc. And that's what happens with people because they're not sure what to do. So the personal part is about understanding what does life look like after business? And it's nothing to do with accounting and tax and business strategy. It's actually personally about things like men's sheds, things like getting involved in golf clubs or hobbies, or actually a lot of clients that I've got are actually giving back to other businesses. So they're sitting on advisory boards or they're acting as a mentor for a younger business owner, which is great. A couple of quotes on exit and succession planning. Steve Covey, so in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. Talking about, and he calls that determining whether or not you're able to create a successful enterprise. Now, I tell clients when I'm asked, when should I start succession or exit planning, I tell people to start before they start the business. Know how you're going to get out before you get in. And it's sort of simple, but a lot of people get it wrong. You know, no one would buy an investment property. No one would buy shares in the share market. No one would put their money into a fund or an investment account if you had absolutely no idea how you could ever get it back out. But people do it all the time with businesses. So it's really about getting clear on what that looks like. What is your end game? Why that's really important is every decision you make then, while you're running your business, when you employ people, when you set up new products or services or pricing or whatever it is that you do, should be worked towards that end game. So when you make a decision to employ someone, I often ask people, is that getting you closer to your end game or not? If it's not, it's the wrong decision. It gives you a really clear, clean framework to manage and plan and strategize around your business because you know what you're trying to get to. What's the outcome look like? Michael Gerber's the other one. Most people would have read Michael Gerber's E-Myth or variations of it over the years. Michael also talks about having an exit strategy is the ball game for any entrepreneur. So again, focusing on how you get out. And for me, I hear lots of people talking about how do I unlock the value in my business? How do I extract the equity? How do I extract all the cash I've invested? How do I extract all the blood, sweat, and tears over 25 years? It's all that kind of conversation. And the answer is you can certainly do that, but you can do it a lot better if you plan for it and start early. And as advisors, I know some of the people on the call are advisors to business owners, then it's really about making sure we've got a strategy for those clients. When we talk to clients, not just talking to them about their accounts or their mortgage finance or their IT systems or their promotional items, it's about talking to them about what have you thought about in terms of succession? Have you got an exit strategy? How do I, as your accountant or your mortgage broker or your IT person or your provider in another area, help you get closer to your succession or exit? And I'll tell you that's why that's really important from an advisory point of view. That's where the big money is. If you think about people in business that have made really good money, a lot of them have made it at a successful exit point when they've listed or when they've sold or when they've merged with someone or when they've, whatever that exit might be, that's the point of maximum dollar return for a business owner. And so it's quite valuable to them to get that right. Now, the reality is in Australia, unfortunately, 55% of all business exits are some kind of failure. Now, that's a pretty horrifying statistic when you think about it. If there's 10 people on the call today, more than half of you are likely to fail when you exit your business. Now, that's pretty ordinary. We're working on trying to improve that. But if you think about all the things that could go wrong in business, and some of them are not business related, it might be a divorce in the family or with your other shareholder gets divorced or a serious illness or some other dispute happens, but some of them are financial and business. So it's about minimizing that risk wherever possible. I'm going to talk to you in a moment about how we do some of that. The last point before we get into the how is strategy takes time. And I don't mean just exit strategy, any strategy. Good marketing strategy, good international export strategy, new product strategy, marketing, whatever it is. It's about time. And the more time you spend, the better outcome you'll get. Rushing your exit reduces the options available to you. The same as rushing a marketing strategy will reduce the impact. And so it's really about dedicating some detailed time to work on the strategic exit of your business. Now, I do that on Fridays. I work from home every Friday, even before COVID, and I work on the business. I don't have client meetings. I don't do things like this. I just work on strategy and documents and really designing the best possible outcome. And I teach my clients to do the same thing. I also have I've got a board in my company. I report to a board of directors, independent, 3 of them aren't working in the business. 1 is, plus myself, and every single board meeting on the agenda is exit strategy. Now, I'm only 53, so I'm not ready to retire anytime soon, but we talk about it every board meeting. What's the strategy? Are we getting closer? What have you done about this? Have you thought about that option? Just to make sure it's always at the top of the agenda and that we're always thinking about it. Otherwise, we'll go 10 years down the track, then I'll be 63 going, oh, I haven't done that. Now, how is a process? We've designed a succession and exit planning process. It's over 5 stages, all about value, and 21 steps. So what do we need to do to prepare the business, the individuals, the financials, the staff, the tax planning, all of the different things? And there's 21 steps that are actually involved in this process. And I'm going to walk you through those steps because either for yourself as a business owner or for your clients, most of these steps are quite relevant and important to think about. The important thing you'll notice is 2 key things, I hope. One is it's a very collaborative space, and that's why in a BBG type forum, it's a good conversation to have, because I can't do succession and exit planning on my own. I certainly need accounting advice, I need legal advice, I need finance. In terms of debt funding, I often need financial planning in terms of things like asset protection and structures and self-managed super. I need some tax advice. There's a whole different range of various advisors that are needed to be involved in succession and exit planning. The other part that I hope you'll see is there's a process here. This is not a transaction. The actual transaction is step 18, liquidity event. Whatever the exit is, that's happening at step 18. 17 of the 21 steps happen before that. So there's a lot of preparation work. And you'll see a lot of the preparation work as we go through it is actually just smart business. It's not about exiting. Every business should have good systems and policies and procedures. Whether you're exiting or not exiting, it's just good business sense. So a lot of what we're going to go through is just smart business. But ultimately, if you go through the 21 steps, by the time you get to step 17 and 18, your business should be much better than what it was when you started. It should be easier to run. It should be more profitable. You should be less stressed, and therefore you're ready to exit, or exit ready, or sale ready, if you want to call it that. Some of our clients get to that point and change their mind. So they actually don't sell. They get to step 18 and say, you know what? I don't want to sell this anymore. It's not as stressful. I'm not working as long hours. I'm making more money. I think I'm going to keep this thing, which for me is a great outcome. Let's get into the detail around how it actually works and what are the things we need to do and think about in terms of preparing the business for a succession or exit event. Now, the first thing to get clear, stage 1 is called identify value, because in my experience, most business owners have no idea what they've got or what it's worth. They don't know the value of the business. They don't know the risks. They don't know the key things that are driving that value up or down. And so they're not working on those key factors. So this is really getting clear on what are we actually dealing with here? What have we got? Where is the value? What does it look like from the individual's point of view? If you've got multiple shareholders, it's about getting some consensus around what the strategy needs to be. What does the timing need to be? I've got a client at the moment that has got 1 shareholder in their 70s, 1 in their 50s, and 1 in their 40s. Now, the requirements for the 70-year-old are completely different to what the 40-year-old's looking for. Different time frame, different amount, different horizon, different focus. So step 1 is really getting clear on, from all of the owners, what's the outcome here? What's the timing look like? How much money do you need to take out of the business to fund retirement? Now, that's a really interesting question at the moment. That used to be the #1 goal in life. Every single client that came to me 10 years ago said 2 things: maximum dollars, how do I get it out? How do I maximize the value, and how do I extract it? That's not the main priority now. Most clients that are coming to us now are looking for what's called legacy or stewardship exits. What that means is they're not saying, I need $2 million to retire. Let's face it, if you've been in business for 20 years, you're probably fairly well off. You've made good money. If you bought a house in Sydney 30 years ago, like most baby boomers, you're already a multimillionaire. So it's not about necessarily needing the money to retire. What it's about now is, how do I make sure the business continues after I exit? How do I look after my staff? How do I make sure my customers continue to be serviced the way I like them serviced? And they're legacy sort of issues. So getting clear on that. And then finally, the one I talked about before, life after business. What will occupy you after you exit? Most people are going to be retired for 15 to 20 years, and some a lot longer than that. What are you going to actually do? Because boredom is a very real threat. particularly, and I'm happy to be a little bit controversial, particularly for white Anglo-Saxon baby boomer males who are typically control freaks. For them, retiring and doing nothing they're better off dead. And I've had clients actually tell me that. I'd rather be dead than sit at home all day and do absolutely nothing. Their wife normally backs that comment up because they don't want them sitting at home doing nothing other than annoying them. So it's really about getting clear, what does that actually look like for the owners? And as I said before, if there's more than one owner, it's about getting alignment on what those goals and outcomes look like. Then it's about getting really clear, what have we got in the business? Now, we use proprietary software to analyze the business. This is not analyzing it for any other reason other than to work out exactly what we're dealing with. What is the business like? How saleable is it? How likely is it someone would buy it? What's it worth in real dollar terms? So what do we need to fund? How does that get sorted? Now, the financial scorecard here, pretty simple model. Green's good, red's bad. We can see here this business is actually pretty good financially, but like most of our businesses that we work with, when you get into the non-financial aspects, we've got some pretty bad scores here. And this is an area, I'm an accountant by background. I don't do any accounting work anymore, but being an accountant, I'm used to looking at the financials, where the problems are, where the issues are, and what distracts from value most is non-financial. Most business owners are entrepreneurial risk takers. We don't focus on de-risking the business. We don't focus on governance. We're not great at documenting policies and procedures. So we need to get someone in that will do that. And you can see, this is an example of a real client. We've changed the name of this client to Smith Engineering just to use it for example purposes and de-identify it. But this is a real business and it's quite typical. Financially performing very well, but non-financially and risk-wise, massive issues all throughout the business. I actually told a firm of architects in Perth the other day, you guys need to be congratulated because despite your very best efforts, you're making a lot of money. They just don't know what they don't know. They're brilliant architects. They're absolutely hopeless at running a business. And that's not all that unusual. So this is about identifying all the key things in the business operationally, governance, strategy, risk management. The financial is not about the dollars, it's about the processes. So where we've got financial there in the bottom left, it's about how often do you meet with your accountant? Do you have budgets? Have you got cash flow forecasts? All those things that most business owners don't have completely sorted. At the same time, we also look at exit readiness. Now, this is more like strategic value scorecard. You know, what is it that we can do to ramp up the value of the business? And you can see here, again, we've got a pretty bad score here. You know, we can see the business is not ready to sell. Some of the financial governance structures aren't in place properly. Our business model's not clearly refined. We don't have risk analysis in place. You know, our sales and marketing sort of, maybe it's dependent on the owner to generate sales. Maybe we haven't got our digital marketing and so on up to speed. There's a whole stack of issues there. And then what's the value proposition for a buyer is the last one. And most people don't think about that. They haven't done any work on, from a buyer's point of view, what does this business look like? Now, all of that combines to come up with a report. And the report is quite detailed. So you can see it's about a 50-page report and it covers off a couple of key areas. So the first one is benchmarking. Not sure if anyone's had their business benchmarked. If you haven't, I would certainly recommend it. It's easy to do. Our software does it automatically, but there's plenty of other ways you can get it done. There's actually a website in Australia called benchmarking.com.au, very creatively named, just benchmarking.com.au, and you can go on there, you can upload your financials, put in your data, it'll give you a report, about 10 pages that shows you all the different areas where your business is over or underperforming, so you can do something about improving it. It also highlights for you a profit gap. So what should you be making in terms of profit that you're not making? Now, in this example on the screen, we can see there's some extra salaries there. Now, that's not necessarily the problem. The problem might be that it's inefficient, or that they've got old computer systems, or that they've got, you know, differences in systems and processes. At the top there, we're actually spending, in this example, we're spending 49% of our revenue on costs of goods sold. Our competitors are spending 47%. Now, that's only a 2% difference, but in this business, that's $200,000. That's a lot of money in terms of a profit gap. That profit gap detracts from your valuation, which is really important. And that's the next point, starting to look at what is the value today. On the left-hand side there, you can see we valued this business at $5.31 million today. What this table does is shows you how you can improve that valuation. So column 2, all we've done is fix the profit gap. Our profit's gone up by $200,000 because that's the profit gap. Now doing that instantly gives me $1 million in value because we've got a multiple of 5 here. I haven't changed the turnover. I haven't changed the multiple. All I've done is improve that profit gap. The next column, I improve it slightly more to get to what we call best in class, which in this industry is 20% profit. Now, 20% profit takes you to $6.5 million. Again, we still haven't touched the turnover. We don't touch the turnover anyway. This is not about growth. This is about improving the valuation metrics. Columns 4 and 5 then go and fix all those non-financial areas, make the business more attractive, make the business, give it some strategic value. Therefore, we are adjusting now, not the profit, but now the multiple, and saying that if your business is attractive to a buyer, instead of getting a multiple of 5, you could probably get a multiple of 6. If we find a strategic buyer for your business, you can probably get a multiple of 7. Now, that process takes 18 months to get from 5.3 to $9 million, but business owners love it. They're actually able to add $3 or $4 million value to their business over that period of time because they've got a strategic pathway to do it. It's not a vague, most people will say, I'll go and grow the business, grow the turnover by 3 million, grow the profit by 1 million, you'll lift up the valuation. That's A, hard to do, B, not necessarily going to contribute to a massive increase in valuation. But this model allows you to measure very carefully exactly what needs to be done to improve the valuation. Now, then we're going to hit pause. So at this point, we've got a business worth $5.3 million and we're going to stop. We're just going to hit the pause button and protect what's already there. Most business owners have not done a fantastic job at protecting what's already there. Most people, as I said, entrepreneurial, risk takers, challengers, trying new things, inventing new products, new marketing, they're all very good at that. But when you stop and say, what have you done about managing risk? Yeah, not so sure. So how does that work? In terms of business, there's sort of 3 key areas that we can look at in terms of minimizing risk and therefore protecting the value we've already got. We just found we've got an asset worth $5.3 million. How do we protect that? What do we need to do to make sure that value is actually locked in, that it can't walk out the door if something goes wrong, that we can't lose? We're not going to go from 5.3 million back to 3 because that would be a disaster. So the first thing is financial planning. Now, I'm not a financial planner, but every business owner needs to use a financial planner. The data, unfortunately, in the academic research is that of all categories, business owners are the worst at taking advice like this. Now, that's pretty scary if you think about it, because business owners typically have more complicated affairs. They've got multiple structures. They've got assets in other names, in other entities. They might have a family trust. They might have a self-managed super fund. They might have bought the property the business operates out of. But the data tells us they don't rely on financial planning advice the way that they probably should. So starting to think about funding retirement. What about taxation? When you sell your business, what happens then? And we'll talk about that in a moment. Have you got a self-managed super fund? Who owns which assets is the most basic question of all. If you own the business and 5 years ago you bought the factory or the shop or the office, and 10 years ago you bought a very expensive piece of machinery to do the printing or the packaging or the, whatever it might be, you've now got a whole stack of assets, probably not in the best ownership structure that they could be or should be. So thinking about who owns which assets and making sure wherever possible, we quarantine the risk from the assets. Now, all businesses have risk. You can't avoid it. Doesn't matter whether you're an accounting firm or you're a manufacturer. I've got a client whose employees float on ropes and clean windows in high-rise buildings, probably the most high-risk business you could ever think of. But it's all about separating the assets from the risks and not owning the building in the trading entity, not having all the IP in your main company. Just thinking about how do I protect every step of the way? How do I separate and protect the value that I've built in that business? Part of that then is thinking about what happens if you get hit by a bus. And literally, this is, again, something business owners don't think about or address frequently enough. It's all about the certainty of the outcome. So I'm not going to ask anyone or embarrass anyone, but it's certainly worth thinking about, just literally, if you walk out of this meeting today and get hit by a bus, what happens? Is it documented? Is there an agreement in place with you and other shareholders that gives absolute certainty about what happens. What happens to your shares? The shares that are worth $3 million, how do you get paid for that? Or how does your family get paid for that if you are actually hit by a bus? Is there going to be a dispute amongst other shareholders about what those shares are actually worth and how we create the value, etc.? That's easy to fix, by the way. It's not a massively complicated process. Shareholders agreements, buy, sell, funding, insurances, all of that can be done. But it's really about making the decision to address it before it's too late. You never get to do this afterwards, obviously. So unplanned events, by definition, no one expects them to happen. No one knows when they are going to happen, but the data tells us it's unlikely, unfortunately, quite possible in lots of businesses. Therefore, get it sorted. Go and see a financial planner, go and see a lawyer and get this sorted, get a shareholders agreement. I've valued many companies that are worth far more than $10 million who don't have shareholders agreements, who don't have buy-sell agreements, don't have insurance on key people. I mean, it's just a disaster waiting for something to go wrong. So making sure, again, the theme here is protecting the value we've already got. We've found value, we know what it is, now we've got to protect it. And the last one is boring, and no business owner likes to do it, but de-risking the business. So I would imagine most of you are business owners. Most people spend most of their time, excuse me, on growth, on improving the business, on strategic marketing, on all the things that will grow. How do we get bigger? How do we get better? How do we sell more? No one stops and thinks, okay, how do we remove or minimize risk wherever possible? But the valuation equation, quite importantly, is affected directly by risk. In any asset class, higher risk equals lower valuation. So you've got to think about what are the risks in your business? And the boring process is to actually sit down and list them, go through them, think about them, which risks are which. And then you have to think about two key factors for every single risk. How likely is it to happen? And what's the impact? Risks that are likely to happen and have a high impact need to be addressed first. Risks that are either unlikely to happen or have a very low impact don't matter really. They can go to the bottom of the list. But in every business, there's normally several risks that are A, likely to happen, and B, have a very high impact. So it's really about getting very clear on what we need to do and just creating a risk. We create a heat map. Which risks are more likely to happen and which ones are likely to have a higher impact. They're the ones we start with. Again, that's because of the effect on valuation. The higher the risk, the lower the multiple, and therefore the lower the valuation. So most business owners think about and focus profit, build profit, grow sales. That's how you increase the valuation. And it is. But the other side of the equation is risk. So you've got to think about, how do I minimize the risk in my business? Because that's the other factor in improving the valuation equation. Now we've got through the protection phase, we're now thinking about how we maximize value. What can we do to maximize the value of our business? And there's quite a few things we can do. But the first place to start always is, what are the exit options? What are the likely exit options available to me? Now this covers most of them. It's not all of them, but most of them are on this slide. Bottom left-hand side, low risk, low time, low complexity, low effort, and low price. Not many people sell their business to their family for maximum dollars. As you go up and to the right, it becomes more complicated. It takes longer. It's more costly. It's more time consuming, but it will maximize price. So right at the top right-hand side is an IPO, or listing your company on the ASX. Now, for most of us, that's very unlikely to happen. We're not big enough. We don't have the right structure, etc. So really the consideration is somewhere in the middle there between partial sale and private equity or strategic sale. If we can push up to the right there, that's where we get maximum value. Now, the key lesson here is it's not one step. I have several examples of really successful exits where people have started with an employee share plan to lock in key employees. They've bought in some private equity or capital. Then they've gone to a strategic sale or sold their business to a listed company. And we'll talk about that a bit later. It's really getting clear on what this strategy looks like. The important point is this. It's a very old quote. It's more than 2,000 years old. It's a very old quote. The proper man understands equity, the small man profits. Now, it's a really interesting exercise to sit down and think about. You should be focused as the owner or the CEO every day on how do you build equity in your business. And equity by definition is long-term. Really thinking about long-term strategy. What I challenge clients to do all the time, I actually asked a client this question yesterday. Write down for me right now, what does your business look like in 2032? And of course, they've got no idea, hadn't thought about it. Happy to be able to tell you what the business looks like in March 2022. Not sure what June might look like, certainly not sure what 2023 looks like, and no idea what 2032 looks like. And so the challenge is, how do you get there if you don't even know what you're looking at? You don't even know where you're trying to get to. So it's really about sitting down and doing a bit of a simple one-page point form. What does the business look like? Do you still own it? Do you still work in it? Is it still making the same products? How much does it turn over? How many people does it employ? Where is it located? All those basic things to get a really clear view of, what am I heading for? What am I aiming for? What am I trying to achieve? That then is accompanied by a strategic business plan. Now, it's not about a 50-page document. It's about some detail around where the business is headed and how and what we're trying to achieve. Again, mapping back to our exit strategy. What's our growth strategy? How do we gradually withdraw ourselves from day-to-day operations and running the business? I'm about to appoint a brand new CEO in Succession Plus. Now, as I said, I'm only 53. I'm nowhere near exiting. But one of the best things you can do in your business is get back out of the way. Let someone else run it. Grow it without you being the key to running the business. And then just detail some steps and milestones along the way. So what does every year between today and 2032 look like? What do we need to build, document, set up, et cetera, to get clear around what that is? Accompanying that should be a strategic financial plan. Now, if you said to me you want to sell your business in 2032 for $10 million, I can tell you exactly what the numbers need to look like. You need to turn over 10 million. You need to make 25% net profit. You need to have minimum risk. A business can't be dependent on you. Now, you just need to plan how you get from where you are today to that picture. And it'll take 3-5 years. But how do you get to that when you know at that point, I can sell this anytime I want for $10 million? Now, a lot of people don't sell at that point, but at least it's sale ready, and you can if you want to. That's the key point. So a strategic financial model that maps out for you all of the key elements to get you to that point. Not a complicated budget, cash flow, profit and loss report for 10 years. That's rubbish. A high-level strategic plan that says, from today, I need to build my turnover to X. I need to have profit at this level. To make this much profit, I need this many people. I need to make this many widgets. I need to sell them at this price to this many customers. And to get that many customers, I need this marketing plan. It's a really simple model. Accompanied with that, you need to monitor everything that's going on. So I know when Kirsty spoke about her introduction, I certainly know most tradies are bloody good tradies, bloody terrible accountants. So it's really about helping them measure and monitor what they need to watch out for. You'll see on this screen, most of it's financial, but on the right-hand side there, there's some non-financial metrics as well, including things like safety. How many safety incidents have we had? How many orders have we shipped out this month? Is that over or above our target or under it? Is it red or green? Just a really simple dashboard that if I was the owner of that business, I can look at that one page and go, okay, we're in good shape. Or actually, we've got a bit of a problem here. Our debtors are blown out. You can see on that target, we haven't met our conversion rate. We haven't got the right number of customers. That's a leading indicator that next month our turnover is going to be lower than it should be, for example. So just having a really clear, concise dashboard. If you're an advisor, this is a great offering for your client. I mean, this is a simple Excel spreadsheet with some fancy graphs. There's tools that you can use now to do that. Xero produces some of this stuff in its new business snapshot module. There's lots of ways you can do it. But the important point is that it's done regularly. It's reviewed regularly. People look at it, watch it, and then make business decisions based on the data, not based on gut feel or some other interesting aspect. That's just breaking down some of the scoreboards. Now, the next one, step 10, is actually really boring. It's really boring. Documenting systems, policies, and procedures. How do we make sure every single aspect of our business is documented? How do we know that all our employees know exactly what to do without asking us? That's the test. If you walked out of your business right now with no notice, didn't take your phone, couldn't answer your emails, would the business still run for 3 weeks without you? Would the business still operate? Would you have new clients? Would you be selling product? Would you be invoicing people, collecting debtors, doing all the things the business needs to do without you? Because what happens in most businesses is owners, unfortunately, make it all about them, and people need to check everything with them before they do the next step. This is about making sure it's not people, it's systems that run the business. Making sure everybody knows what needs to be done next without you, without asking you a question, without waiting for approval, without checking something before they send it. The E-Myth book, as I said at the start, Michael Gerber, is all about systems and process, turning a small business into a machine that just runs without dependency on people. McDonald's example is a really good one. Everyone's seen that movie, The Founder, you know, where the guys draw the store. I love the scene where they draw the store on the car park with chalk and then measure how long it takes to walk from the sink to the oven. And if it's more than 8 seconds, they go, no, that's too slow. Let's move the sink over here so it's only 5 seconds. Let's move this to there. It's just about efficiency. Systems are about creating efficiency within the business so that all the tasks in the business are systemized, documented. It runs smoothly no matter who's in charge. If you've got a really well documented and systemized business, theoretically, any one of us could go in and run that business. Anyone that can read and write and has some basic skills could go in and run that business. The reality is most of our businesses are highly dependent on the owner. It's the number one risk factor for SMEs internationally. Number one, owner dependence. They cannot run without the owner. And as soon as you have a business that can't run without the owner, you actually don't have a business, you have a job. Jobs can't be sold. It's very difficult. Unless you're a soccer player for Manchester United, you can't sell your job. It's not that easy. You can sell a business that's not dependent on you. So spending time and effort on systems and procedures. Now, most business owners that I work with hate that thought, hate the idea of doing it. Most of them can't do it even if they wanted to. So it's really about outsourcing it, finding someone either in your business that will do it for you or outside your business. There are actually companies that we work with. That's all they do. They'll go into a business and document every system, policy, and procedure in the whole place. So everybody knows exactly how it should work. The next step then is marketing and sales. This is becoming more and more and more of an issue. People just do not have this sorted. We've got a business that we're selling at the moment, and the buyers ask me for 5 years Google Analytics history. They want to look at every single thing that happened on that client's website for the last 5 years. Now, of course, my client's first answer is what? Where do I get that? What is that? What does that tell me? Business buyers and investors and even banks now are starting to look at this very, very carefully. Where does the work come from? If the answer is, it comes from me because I play golf at XYZ Club every Wednesday afternoon and that's where I get all my clients, that is not a good answer. It has to be not owner dependent, and it has to be a system and a machine, a funnel that's generating new business when you sleep. Website, digital marketing, social media, all those channels, the CRM, the sales process, all the automations. There's a lot of technology now available to help with this, but most businesses still haven't got it quite right. It's also about being able to document a growth strategy around that marketing plan. Why am I doing social media posts? Is it about getting people to come to an event? Is it about getting people to buy a product online from an e-store? Is it about getting people to read a white paper on employee share plan so they can understand what an employee share plan is so they might buy one? It's really getting clear on what your marketing strategy is, and that's an area of expertise most business owners don't have. Then the boring stuff, and this is a really good opportunity for advisors to get involved. I actually told an accounting firm the other day, they have nearly 200 business clients that turn over more than $5 million. Great practice, really good practice. And I said to them, you guys should put one of your senior accountants, either a partner or a manager, on every single one of those clients' boards. Like acting as an advisory board member for business owners, typically charging between $5 and $8 grand a month to add that value of structure and discipline. That's what corporate governance is all about ultimately, structure and discipline. Monthly meetings, monthly reporting, minutes, action items, follow-up. It's really about just putting the structure and discipline that large companies have into a small business. And business owners love it because they get accountability, they get an independent sounding board where they can run ideas past. I sat in one of these meetings, I've actually got one this afternoon with one of my clients, and they've written a proposal, and I'm going to sit in the board meeting and just say, this is the most stupid thing I've ever read. What are you doing? But had they not brought that to a board meeting, they may well have gone ahead with it. Now, I've also got this in my business. I've got a board in my business. And the other thing that's important, that last point there is really important. A lot of businesses don't have this, but it's called a decision, rights, and authority. So we call it a decision manual. What it means is really simply, in my business, there are levels of decision-making that are delegated to various people in the business. So for example, my PA is in the office today. If the printer dies or if she needs paper or new toner, she goes out and buys it. I don't want to even know about it. If it's $500, she can go and do that. If it's $2,000, she can go and do that. If it's $5,000, she can't. At $5,000, she needs to check with my general manager. I've got a general manager in my business. If it's $5,000 or above, she needs to check with him. And he will say, yes, that's fine, go and do that. If it's $50,000 and above, he needs to check with me. If it's $100,000 and above, I need to check with my board. Now, I own the majority of shares, my company, right? So if I want to spend $100,000, theoretically, I can. Why do I have a process in place to check that with a board? Two reasons. A, I make mistakes. If I make a mistake that costs $10, no one cares, or even $1,000, no one's going to care. At $100,000, it's a problem if I make a mistake. So I want the board to check on that. And it's also about accountability. Why are we doing that? So in making that investment of $100,000, I have to actually document it. I have to put down my reasons. I have to we've got a one-page sort of project plan that we use that says, here's the proposal. I want to spend $100,000 on employing this person. Here's why, here's the need, here's the return we're going to get, here's the time frame, here's the key risk factors. And at the bottom of the page, we've actually got a heading that says pull the pin. And the pull the pin is at what dollar amount or what time threshold do we abandon this idea? Do we decide that's not working? So if I'm going to spend $100,000 on Google Ads, maybe I spend 20, and if it hasn't worked by then, I'll give it up because it's obviously not the right decision. But the important message there is you have to have that structure in place for yourself and for your clients. Most business owners are used to making whatever decision they want, whenever they want, without any structure or discipline. And let's be honest, you make mistakes. I certainly do. And a couple of my mistakes have been stopped by that process, by taking it to the board. And one of my board members is an accountant. He's been around for a lot longer than me. And he often says to me, hang on a minute, what about this? Or did you think about that? Or could you do it this way? And therefore saving us either time or money or both. Now, obviously, management succession and employee engagement is the buzzword at the moment. But really, I love this quote, just talking about the fact that the best executive is the one who's got sense enough to pick good people to do what they want done, and the self-restraint to keep from meddling. Business owners' worst habit is to meddle with employees, to constantly review, revise, interfere, suggest a way to do something differently, just slows everything down. So just getting the right people, putting the right systems and framework around them, and then getting out of the way and let them get on with it. Now, the other part of that then is the employee side, and starting to think about how do we educate and empower our employees. We use a model called ownership mindset. And it's quite an interesting model because what it does is it basically works on 4 key areas. The first one is the right people. So having the right people, having job descriptions with KPIs, measuring their performance is important. The second one, knowledge, is not so much, I'm not going to go and train an accountant on how to be an accountant. What I'm going to teach them is how to run their business. What are the key things that the accountant or the architect or the baker needs to know to better run their business? And that's where, a lot of business coaches get involved in this kind of area. Not teaching them how to bake better cakes because that's something they already know, but how does a business like that make more money or be more successful or reduce risk? Systems are about management and measurement, measuring the right things in the business, looking at leading KPIs instead of lagging KPIs. So as I said, I'm an accountant by background, but it doesn't matter how good your accountant is. If your accountant's an absolute genius and gives you February's accounts on the first day of March, you still can't do anything about them. They're finished, they're gone. So what you need to know is what's April likely to look like? So what are the leading indicators that'll tell me what levers I need to pull now to fix up what might happen in April? How many proposals have I done? How many website visits have we got? How many quotes have gone out in the last 30 days that are likely to come in March? Because I can fix that. I can do something about that now. I can't do anything about February. It's all over. But I can do something about March if I know what it's likely to look like. And the last one then is using incentives, and we often use an employee share plan, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. We use incentives then to drive that behaviour. I've just finished some very serious academic research on employee share plans, and one of the findings is that employee behaviour can be easily adjusted based on the way that they get paid. So employees behave the way they get paid. So you can see lots of examples of really bad employee behaviour being driven by the way the company or the business pays them. Sales commissions are a great example. Yes, they do generally improve sales, but what also happens is there is a trail of destruction behind the salesperson. They don't fill out the paperwork properly. They don't put a purchase order number on the invoice. The CRM's not updated. Yeah, they sell a lot, but it doesn't filter through the rest of the business. They get paid on sales. I've got multiple examples of salespeople bringing forward orders, holding orders back because it's near the end of the month. They know they're not going to get their threshold in February, so I'll put that order into March. Not what the customer wants, but it helps the salesperson get paid more. So the remuneration strategy, the incentive plan, is really important around how you incentivize employees and how you manage their behavior through the way that they're paid. Now, we've actually used for quite some time now, the first peak performance trust I set up was back in 2006 and it's still running. So this is an employee share plan. And the underlying psychology here, forget the accounting and tax for a minute, the underlying psychology is simply to get employees to think and act like business owners. So you imagine, whether you've got 1 employee or 50, you imagine if you could get 2 or 3 people thinking and acting in the business the same as you do. You're the owner, you think about the business differently, you behave differently, you act differently around customers, process, etc. Imagine if your employees thought and acted similar to what you do, you will get a massive increase and a massive alignment around building equity value. So we use an employee share plan. I'm a big advocate of employee share plans. I've got over 100 of them running. There's about 1,000 employees in our employee share plans. They're becoming more and more popular. It's really about using that incentive of equity to align the employees with the owners. Generally speaking, in most businesses, there's some level of clash between the owners and the employees. There's some mismatch around goals and outcomes. I need higher pay. That doesn't impact me in terms of profit. It's all about just getting alignment between business owners and employees around key performance outcomes. Sometimes profit, but that also might be a sales metric. It might be, I've got clients that use this for quality control. They use a net promoter score, survey style, to work out which employees earn more equity in this quarter. Now, that works really well because one of their key outcomes is customer service. So it's just really about locking in key people using an employee share plan that benefits both the employer and the employee. It's a golden handcuff, if you like. And often in the employee share plan rules, we put things like discount clauses in. So the earlier an employee leaves, the less they get. The longer they stay, the more equity they build up. And they know that it's not a hidden trap. We tell them that up front. It's part of the structure of the plan to maximize value. So how does it work? A couple of key things. Firstly, it's a profit share based on performance. What we do with the profit share, instead of paying it out to employees, it goes into the employee share plan, and that's then used to buy equity in the business for those same employees. What that means is employees stick around, their performance normally improves, and they end up owning equity. So I'm just going to walk through really quickly an example so we can have a look at this. This is becoming quite a big area of our business, actually. So the important things are, the only thing this plan is allowed to do is buy shares in your company. So if you are on the left-hand side there, mum and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we're going to call them, owning Smith Engineering. In the middle, we've got a safe. That's our employee share plan. And in this example, we've invited 4 employees to join our employee share plan. What we do is we get to the end of the year and we have a profit share plan where part of that profit is paid from Smith Engineering into the employee share plan. The only thing the employee share plan is allowed to do is buy equity from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So the money comes out of the employee share plan to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is quite a tax effective way to get some money out. But at the same time, we've now got 4 employees on the right-hand side there that now own shares in Smith Engineering through the employee share plan. That works quite effectively. What we typically do is set up some kind of profit share model where we've got our net profit at $800,000 in this example, which is our benchmark. Below $800,000, nothing's going to happen. Once we get to $800,000, 20% of the amount above that is our contribution into the share plan. So we get to the end of the year, we've actually made 1.2 million. That's 400,000 above the benchmark of 800. 20% of that, $80,000 gets physically paid from the company into the employee share plan and is then used to buy shares from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That means those 4 employees on the right-hand side now own $80,000 worth of shares in Smith Engineering. They now get the benefits of any capital gains or increase in value, but also any dividends. And without getting into the detailed tax sort of description, it's quite an effective program. The employee share plan rules in Australia have some very generous tax concessions. So that $80,000 contribution is tax deductible to the company. It's not taxed in the employee share plan, and the employees can defer the tax on it for up to 15 years. So from a tax point of view, it's a pretty smart way to get some money out of the company, but also lock in those key employees. If we pay a dividend, the employees receive the dividend. It's actually all about aligning the business owner with the employees. And if we can do that effectively, you will get improvements in productivity, performance, staff retention, and ultimately helping build the value of the company over a period of time is what that really is all about. The next key point, and this is another one that most business owners hate to think about, is succession is not just about owning the shares or who owns the company. It's also about management succession. Who manages the business after you're gone? Now, as I said to you at the start, I'm about to appoint a new CEO in my business. So someone will be managing the business before I'm gone. I'm going to move to an executive chairman type role, but I'm going to have a CEO running the business day to day. That therefore means it's not all about me. This is really vital for 2 reasons. One, it proves then, as of next month, Succession Plus doesn't need Craig West to run. It's going to be run by somebody else. But secondly, imagine the time that that's freeing up for me. How much more could I do in terms of marketing or in terms of presenting at events like this or writing articles to go into media publications or whatever it is that I'm making videos, whatever I'm going to do to promote the business can be done far better if I'm not stuck in the day-to-day running the business daily. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's about identifying internally and externally who have you got that could take over in various roles. Now, this doesn't have to be the CEO. This could be, I'm going to put a new financial controller in place. Who have I got? In my accounting team, I've got 3 candidates here. One's got not enough, they haven't been with me for that long. The other one's not qualified or hasn't got enough experience. And the third one on the right, not up to speed technically and probably not quite the right person anyway. This is a really simple chart. It's normally got 20 or 30 rows, but it just allows you to identify which candidates you've got. Are they likely or able to take over from you? And if they're not, then what do we need to do to improve that? So candidate 2 looks like they're ticking all the boxes except for qualifications. So maybe they need to go and do an accounting qualification or a marketing degree or whatever it might be to make sure they're actually qualified to take on that role. Giving us enough time to help manage that. I've got a client doing this right now. They're about to appoint their financial controller as general manager. Financially, brilliant. Better than anyone in the business, better than the owner. But in terms of marketing, not fantastic. So I've just said right now, starting today, every meeting you have with your marketing agency, with your PR firm, to do with marketing in the business, that person needs to come with you. They need to get the experience and qualifications. Now, the way that we do this is put together an org chart today, an org chart in 2 years and an org chart in 5 years. What gaps have we got? Where have we got issues? Where have we got uncertainty about who's doing what? And then we go and fix that problem. Now we can get to the more exciting stuff. How do we get the money out? How do we extract the value? And lots of business owners use words like unlock, which means they feel like they're trapped in the business because they can't get out. So the first thing is to think about tax. And I'm not going to go into great detail about tax. Don't worry about that. It's not a great breakfast topic. Tax planning is really important in terms of exiting your business. There are things called small business CGT concessions, specifically designed legislation to reduce the tax payable by business owners when they exit. But there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of conditions to qualify. There's value thresholds. There's ownership structures, a lot of issues. Talk to your accountant about this today. Find out what you need to do to qualify. So I would simply say, firstly, get a valuation and work out what your business is worth, because one of the tests is there has to be $6 million threshold. If you're over $6 million, you're out. bad luck. If you're under it, you probably qualify, but there's a lot of other tests as well. Then start to talk to your accountant about, what does the tax look like if I sold it? If my business has just been valued at $5 million and I sold it tomorrow, what does the tax look like? And then the important question, can I reduce that? How do I reduce it? Can I use these small business concessions to reduce the tax payable? And the answer is yes, you can, but there's a lot of rules. So you need to think about who owns which assets. For example, anything inside your self-managed super fund is excluded from the test. Your home is excluded from the test, but your business is not. Your business premises is not. Your investment property is not. Your share portfolio is not. Therefore, start to think about, how do we get some of these assets into super? Or how do we get them into the right name? Or what do I need to do to think about preparing for tax when you sell your business? It will be a tax event, no doubt about that, but you can reduce the tax. In a lot of cases, we've sold several businesses at and around $5 million and no tax is payable at all. You can actually get the tax rate on that sale to zero if you're prepared and you spend the time and effort to get it right. You can't do that the day after you sign the contract, by the way. It's got to be planned up front. Then we've got to think about all the documentation you need. And I tell business owners all the time, get these documents ready now. Write your IM today. Have a look at, what does it actually look like? This is a sales brochure for your business. How would you sell your business to a buyer today? A couple of key headings, around the business, the company, the market, the pricing, the operations, the financials, all that sort of stuff. But just starting to get that stuff together. And even more importantly, where are all the due diligence documents? Has anyone been through a due diligence process when you sell a business? It's a nightmare. It's absolutely horrendous. The buyer will ask you for things you've never even thought of. And most business owners don't have them, don't know where they are, can't get them, panic, buyer runs away because it's all too hard. If you can do the work on this is about reducing risk up front, starting to think about, what do we got in terms of assets? What have we got in terms of documents? Is all our intangible asset and intellectual property documented? Have we got trademarks and brand marks, and is all that owned and documented properly? Do we have policies and procedures manuals? So all this links together. The best transactions are where due diligence is sorted up front and you don't have to run around and try and find it when it's all too late. Then we get to the interesting part, selling. Now, there's one important tip here. How you sell and who you sell to is more important than your profit. Now, that doesn't mean don't make money. That's a silly conclusion. You have to make money. But I have sold businesses that make $2 million net profit for $20 million because I sold it to a listed company. Or I've sold another business that hardly makes any profit at all, had a turnover of about 10 million. We sold it for nearly $30 million to a strategic buyer because that business had a particular product they could leverage. The best example of this is, look at Apple. Apple buys companies every week. You go and look at Apple, go and look at the announcements Apple makes on the stock exchange weekly. They buy something every week. It's nearly always a strategic purchase. Go back 10 years ago, Apple bought a voice recognition company that was doing nothing. It made very little money, but it had a really clever technology around voice and speech recognition. It is now Siri. You cannot uninstall it from your iPhone. It's part of the operating system. So that's a strategic purchase. If you think about that, I don't know how many million or billion iPhones there are in the world. Every single one of them has Siri on it. You cannot take it off. Now, 10 years ago, the company that had Siri was doing nothing with it, selling it to nobody. They had bugger all turnover, but they had some really cool tech. So they sold it for a lot of money because Apple straight away goes, I can put that in 10 million iPhones next month. Bang. Instant strategic sale. Who you sell to is really quite important. And in my experience, every single business we've ever worked with has a strategic buyer. It's really worth thinking about, who would that be? Who would pay more money for your business than anyone else? That's actually worthy of more attention than how do I make another $5,000 a year, because you'll get a lot better outcome. Now, the last part, after you've sold, happy days, you've got a check, you're sitting at home wondering what you're going to do all day. There's a couple of things you need to sort. The first one is, there's a real interesting change that occurs when you sell your business. The last dollars you will ever earn. So there's no more salary, there's no more dividends. You've sold your business, you've got a check for $10 million. As a business owner, typically, if we need money, we take it out of the business. If the business needs money, we put it in. That moves around pretty flexibly. That all stops the day you sell. You will never earn any money ever again other than investments. Now, that's a very difficult time frame. You've got to think about, what does that actually mean? I've got a check for $10 million. It's got to last me 10 years. My dad tells people the secret to success is dying on the day you run out of money. So his plan is to run out of money the day before he dies, I think actually he said. But how do you manage that? How do you protect that asset? Where do you invest it? What does it look like? And then life after business. I've actually got a client who is having the world's best time. He got a check for nearly $20 million. He gave 18 of it, I think it was, to a financial planner. And then he plays in the stock market with the other million. Now, what he said to me was really clever. He said, I can completely bugger up that $1 million. I could lose it all next month. If there's a war in Russia or if something happens, I could lose that $1 million. It doesn't matter. I've still got $18 million that's invested by a financial planner. I'm not going to lose that. But he loves researching and reading about the stock market. He sends me an email once a week. Oh, Craig, have a look at this. I've found this, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? That's his hobby. He enjoys it. And he's making good money out of his million, by the way. But if he didn't, the key point is it doesn't matter because he's got the other 18 tucked away. We also have to think about asset protection as different now. Our asset protection problems as a business owner are all about business risk, about getting sued, about claims, about workplace accidents, about liability, around debts, around guarantees, warrant, all that changes. But now we're heading towards retirement. We've probably got children. Some of our children have probably got children. Maybe some of our children have been divorced. So now we've got a blended family. We have to think about, what does asset protection look like now? And what does it look like in terms of things like mental health and illness as we get older, dementia, COVID, any other health issues that might happen? How's that managed as well? And lastly, the one no one likes to think about, but what do we do around our estate? Hopefully we've built up a good business. We've got investments. We've got assets behind us. What do we do now around protecting that firstly? But what happens if we do get hit by a bus? We're all going to die at some point unless someone comes up with a magic pill sometime soon. What do we do? Where do we want the money to go? How is it looked after in terms of mental health and things like dementia and enduring power of attorney so that somebody can look after our affairs if we're not capable? And then often our clients are thinking about or talking about things like philanthropy, setting up a charitable foundation, donating money, doing those sorts of things as well. So look, we've covered a lot of material. I'm happy to pause for a minute, stop talking. I'm sure you'll all be happy about that, and answer some questions, have a discussion about some of that stuff. But I'll hand back to you guys. I know you have a particular forum around the way you do this, which is very clever, but happy to answer any questions you've got.